In the peace treaty that put an end to the Second Punic War, important indemnities were fixed for the Carthaginians. However, Carthage had definitively lost its possessions in the Iberian Peninsula, a great source of resources for them, so it was very difficult for them to collect the 200 talents of silver per year that they had to pay as tribute for 50 years after the war. Moreover, by imposition of the treaty, Carthage could not declare war without the permission of Rome, but had to militarily assist the Roman Republic in its wars against Antiochus III, king of the Seleucid Empire, and Philip V and Perseus, kings of Macedonia, deepening its economic problems. At the same time, the traumas of the struggle are still very present in Rome, unable to forget the great amount of human and other losses caused by the invasion of Italy, as well as the terror provoked by the proximity of Hannibal, for centuries remembered and used by Roman mothers as a way to frighten children. Massinissa, king of Numidia and ally of Rome, took advantage of the defenselessness of Carthage to take 2 cities from them, using as an excuse the myth of the foundation of Carthage, which said that they descended from a foreigner, Dido, who had only obtained the right to have as much land as she could cover with an ox skin. Both times Rome denied Carthage the right to defend itself. There was a third time, and in about 152 BC, Massinissa conquered the Punic city of Oroscopa. A Roman embassy traveled to Carthage, outraged by the loss of territory and wealth. Among the Roman delegates who were to act as arbitrators in the problems between the Carthaginians and the Numidians was Cato the Elder, the most prominent supporter of the final annihilation of Carthage. During his visit, Cato the Elder was surprised by the prosperity of the Carthaginian capital despite the sanctions of war. He returns home aware of the importance of definitively destroying Carthage. Plutarch says that he provoked the war. When Cato found the city not devastated or in a miserable situation, as the Romans believed, but overflowing with brave young men full of enormous wealth, full of weapons of all kinds, and war material that showed proudly, he thought that for the Romans, it was not the time to establish and deal with the problems of the Numidians and Massinissa. He believed that, if they did not seize the city, an old enemy that had prospered in an incredible way full of rancor, they would run again the same dangers. He therefore hurried back and informed the Senate that the previous defeats and misfortunes of the Carthaginians, having less undermined their power than their folly, seemed to transform them not weaker, but more trained to war, and that already the combats against the Numidians preluded those which they would make against the Romans, and that peace and pacts were a name for the delay of the war which awaited their occasion. Plutarch adds that, in making known his opinion on any matter, he would add to what he said the following: "It seems to me good that Carthage does not exist." Historians disagree about the exact phrase, which is passed into the popular imagination as "Carthage must be destroyed," in Latin, Carthago delenda est. It was the third time that Rome prevented Carthage from defending itself, so they decided to break the peace treaty. The 50 years of tribute payments imposed by the treaty had already passed, so they considered the rest of the terms of the agreement invalid. In 150 BC, they prepared an army of some 30,000 soldiers and attempted to reconquer Oroscopa, but suffered an unmitigated defeat. The pact is broken. The Carthaginian state is divided between those who hate the Romans and want war, and the pre-Romans who want to live in peace. The latter expel to death the leaders of the military faction, including Hannibal the Boeotarch, the general who had tried to conquer Oroscopa. They try to negotiate with Rome so as not to start another war, but they do not succeed, and in 149 BC, the Third Punic War begins. Carthage declares its unconditional surrender and hands over 300 young Carthaginians as hostages. However, Rome deploys 80,000 infantry and 4,000 cavalry in Africa and demands the surrender of all weapons. After initial reluctance, the Carthaginians delivered armaments for some 200,000 soldiers and 2,000 catapults. In addition, the Romans burned the Punic military ships. With Carthage disarmed, the Roman delegate speaks thus according to Aemilianus. "We praise you, Carthaginians, for your promptness in obeying and your present zeal in the matter of hostages and arms. However, one should not speak too much in decisive circumstances. Accept with nobility the remaining orders of the Senate, renounce Carthage in our favor, and settle wherever you wish within your territory at least 80 stadia, about 15 kilometers, from the sea. For we have decided to raze your city to the ground." With this request, Rome wanted to take away Carthage's main source of wealth, maritime trade. Moreover, by destroying the city, they wanted to prevent the Numidians from taking it, for in that case they might become too powerful a force, only 3 days' sail from Rome. The anger in Carthage was such that the people almost murdered the ambassadors. Seeing war inevitable, they began to rearm. Some of the measures they took were to assassinate all the italics, free the slaves to help in the defense of the city, call back Asdrubal the Boeotarch to lead the army, reinforce the walls, and ask for a 30-day truce to send a delegation to Rome. The Carthaginians had to make new weapons, and they melted down any metal they could find to do so, and even used female hair to make bows. Soon after, the Romans tried to conquer the city, which had some 90,000 defenders, in addition to 300,000 civilians. In various battles, the Carthaginians managed to successfully defend themselves against Roman attempts to penetrate the excellently equipped and defended walls. The following year, the 2 Roman consuls were also unable to enter the Punic capital and were even defeated in other minor cities. After the winter in 147 BC, Scipio Aemilianus was elected consul. He had already excelled in the attempts to take Carthage and now finally has the power of command. He decides to focus on taking the capital. He blocks its port by building a dike and mounts the siege. Gradually, his strategy succeeds, and he manages to isolate the city, prey to famine and an epidemic. After the winter, the Romans launched the final attack, taking advantage of the Punic weakness. Even so, the city must be conquered street by street, house by house, for 23 days. Scipio promises to pardon all those who surrender. Among them is the leader Asdrubal. Aemilianus relates that he addressed Scipio thus: "There is no reason for vengeance against you from the gods, Roman, since you have followed the laws of war. But with regard to that Asdrubal who has become a traitor to his homeland, to his temples, to me and to my sons, may the gods take their revenge, and you along with them." On the other hand, to Asdrubal he said, "O thou most wretched, traitorous, and effeminate among men, me and my sons shall this fire bury, but thou, the leader of the great Carthage, to what triumph wilt thou serve as an ornament? What punishment wilt thou receive from him at whose feet thou standest?" After hurling these reproaches, he cut the throats of his sons and threw himself with them into the fire. Thus the end of Carthage brings to mind its legendary queen Dido, who had committed suicide and burned herself on a funeral pyre after the flight of Aeneas. After 3 years, Carthage has fallen. The city is sacked, and the Senate decides that it should be destroyed to the ground. Legend has it that the city was covered with salt, but no ancient source mentions this, and the amount of salt that would have been needed makes the act very expensive and unfeasible. The survivors were sold as slaves, and the territories, already in the hands of Roman or African colonists, formed the province of Africa. Carthage would be rebuilt a century later by Julius Caesar. Also in 146, Rome destroyed Corinth, which represented the domination of Greece. With no strong rivals on the horizon, Rome was already caput mundi, head of the known world. However, the future of the city would be turbulent. 4 civil wars, coup d'etat, dictatorships. The historian Sallust attributes this to the year in which Rome dominated the Mediterranean and lost its fear of the enemy, causing a weakening and relaxation that ended up being detrimental. That's it for today, but don't worry, we're just getting started. Thanks for joining this historical ride, and get ready for more fun facts and stories in the next video. See you soon, time travelers.